What's up, YouTube? This is Big Mike. As most of us know, both Blake Griffin and Chris Paul have chose to opt out of their contracts and have become, I believe, both unrestricted free agents. And the expectation is that both of them, in particular Chris Paul, will resign with the club. Especially in Chris Paul's situation, because Chris Paul, if he resigns, will become eligible for a max deal worth $210 million overall. Now, it's easy for one of us to get on a video and tell this man, no, you should play for your legacy, you should play for this, you should play for that. I have no problem whatsoever if Chris Paul chose to play in Cleveland and go for the money. I mean, I can't tell anybody to play for less money just to prove some type of, that they really wanted and that they want. I can't tell somebody, okay, leave $50 million on the table just to prove to me and other people that you really have a hunger for winning. I can't do that. But I do know that the media will do that. Okay? I mean, my advice to anybody is to get as much money as you possibly can. Because a lot of times we see these organizations will fuck you out of your money if they can do it. Shit, not just organizations, just everyday life, jobs, whatever. Insurance, anything, you know what I mean? Insurance companies. I do gotta say, like I said, sports media will look at Chris Paul a certain way if he chose the money. If he never won a championship in his career, they'll always associate him more with the John Stockton wing of point guards, who were statistically dominant, were among the best point guards of the generation, but they never were able to get over the hump and win a championship. As a matter of fact, in Chris Paul's situation, he's never even been to an NBA Finals. Stockton did go to two, but unfortunately he ran into Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. He and Karl Malone. The farthest Chris Paul's gotten is, I believe, is the Western Conference semifinals. Yeah, I don't think he's even played in the Western Conference Finals. So the farthest as Chris Paul's gone is the second round of playoffs. That will hurt his legacy. Okay, playoff success, unfortunately, is a part of the historical rankings. It just is. That's why a guy like Alex English, for instance, isn't as revered as a James Worthy, even though I think that you can make the argument that Alex English was a better overall player than James Worthy, at least skills-wise. You know what I'm saying? Talent-wise. But because James Worthy was on those Lakers championship teams and more people saw him more prominently display his skills and athleticism, as opposed to Alex English back in the 80s when the NBA wasn't quite as ubiquitous as far as, with the league pass and what have you. Generally speaking, you didn't see the Nuggets as frequently. And they didn't go to the playoffs as frequently. They didn't have the same playoff success. But that's how players are judged. And if Chris Paul goes to the Clippers, it's a foregone conclusion that he'll never win an NBA championship. Now, I see out there today that the Houston Rockets are interested in a Chris Paul. Excuse me. Now, I have heard, this is interesting. I've seen that the Rockets, I think, are trying to trade. They have them trading blocks, Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams. Now, if they can acquire Chris Paul for those two, they should be able to try to aggressively pursue that, as I've heard they have done and are doing so. And of course, I've heard that Chris Paul has a lot of interest in playing for San Antonio Spurs. So what that tells me is that Chris Paul may be torn a little bit. He's probably torn between, as we all would, looking at that money, $210 million. Okay. And a sense of obligation and loyalty to the Clippers organization. But as I've said in my last couple of videos, a lot of times the organization isn't as loyal as you think they would be. Today, Chris Paul is the face of the Clippers organization. But that doesn't mean he's going to be the face of the organization 3 years from now. Look what Chicago just did to Jimmy Butler. So, I say, Chris Paul, do what makes you happy. Fuck what I or any of my subscribers or really anybody in the media wants you to do. Okay? If you feel that at this age that you are now, I think you're about 32 years old, you still are somewhat near your prime. You're not quite the player you were in your 20s, but you're still somewhere near your prime years, close to it. You're still considered one of the best point guards in the NBA. I think, do what you want to do. If you feel that the clock is ticking, so to speak, as far as your championship aspirations and championship window opportunity is concerned, if you want to play for the Spurs, so be it. You want to play for the Houston Rockets, then so be it. I would imagine if you join the Houston Rockets, then that would push James Harden back to the shooting guard position. And players like Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams, you can replace those guys to an extent with some other scoring punches. But then, Lou Williams was able to create his own shot. But with two players who are essentially point guards or have point guard ability in the backcourt, such as a Chris Paul and a James Harden, you basically have 2 point guards playing in the backcourt. Then you really don't necessarily need another playmaker or ball handler, because these types of guys can set you up and give you put you in the best position on the court at all times for you to be the most effective offensively. So that would make sense. If he goes to the Spurs, I think they become instant contenders as well. So whatever Chris Paul wants to do, I'll support him. I've always liked Chris Paul. I thought that the last couple of years he's gotten a raw deal to an extent, because this is a guy that at one point in time, and I've said before in countless videos, this is a guy who, before the Derrick Rose hype and before all that crap, legitimately, many people were saying that Chris Paul was on the verge of becoming, in consideration, as one of the greatest, if not the greatest, little man of all time. Injuries kind of have taken away that little shine, or so, but Chris Paul is a magnificent player, and he's a hell of a competitor. And he reminds me more of a personality-wise an Isaiah Thomas. And I do think that a championship will illuminate his career. You look at a guy, and championships tend to do that. You look at a guy like Chauncey Billups. Chauncey Billups has a championship, of course, with Detroit Pistons in 2004, and that marvelous upset they had against the Los Angeles Lakers at that time. The Lakers tried to buy a team. Now, Chauncey Billups was a fine player, but I think the championship kind of, and plus I think he went through like a stretch where he was hitting some big shots for a couple of years with the Detroit Pistons. I think the championship kind of inflated his overall value. Like, for instance, I mean, just to say this, not to shut up Chauncey Billups. I thought he was a good player, but I remember looking when he was an active player, right? I used to look at NBA Live. I remember Chauncey Billups' overall rating used to be, around 83, And, he used to have like that max rating where he was like playing at his best and it was like 87, right? I thought it was reasonable. You look at him now after his retirement, right? And some people wonder if he could potentially be a Hall of Famer. I'm like, I don't know about that. Now I see that all of a sudden his ratings are 91. I'm like, come on now. Chauncey Billups he was never that good. But that's what championships do, you know what I mean? Chris Paul's, in my opinion, a far better overall player than Chauncey Billups. So that's just my take on that, man. Whatever he does, I think it's the best decision for Chris Paul. My personal bias, if you want to ask me personally, yes, I would like to see him on a team like the Spurs or the Rockets or whatever. A team that, when he would join, they would become an instant championship contending team. But that's my selfish preference, my self-preference, I'll say that. But whatever he does, I think it's the best opportunity for him. And also, people got to remember his family. That's it at the end of the day. That's all Chris Paul has to please. Himself, and his family.